Right, good morning everybody and welcome to the meeting of the Thirsk and Malton Area Planning Committee on the 24th of October 2024. It is 10 o'clock, so we will get started. First of all, members of the public are entitled to attend this meeting as observers for all those items taken in open session. Please note the meeting is being recorded. If you wish to record the meeting yourself, then please give due regard to the Council's protocol on audio, visual recording and photography at public meetings. I'd also like to remind members and officers to speak clearly and audibly when addressing the meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, please exit the chamber by way of the emergency exits located at the entrance to and at the rear of the chamber and congregate in the visitors' car park. Ladies and gents, toilets are located in the entrance corridor. That concludes my housekeeping, and I'll move on to the agenda. We have one apology for absence from Councillor Sam Cross, so he's not with us this morning. Next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Can you speak up? I'll do my best. Minutes from the last meeting, is everybody happy with those? Can I take it by general affirmation? Proposed by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Napton. That's that done. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest? Just for clarity, one of the items is based in Hustwaite, and is very close to the national landscape. And so I need to declare that I am a member of the Howardian Hills National Landscape Joint Advisory Committee. It is personal, non-prejudicial, non-pecuniary interests. So thank you for that. Councillor Napton.
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to declare non-pecuniary. I am the clerk to the parish council at Stillington, so obviously I've submitted comments on behalf of Stillington Parish Council. I don't take any part in that decision-making process. I send those comments in on behalf of the council. They're not my comments, so there's no predetermination there, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Napton. Moving swiftly on, we've got 3 items on the agenda. We do have speakers. Each speaker will be invited to come forward. The format is that you are given 3 minutes, and as I know on one of the applications that's been split by 2 people, so they have 1.5 minutes each. So just so that we are clear on that. So item 4 is application ZB 2401340 and it's for the construction of 8 dwellings and garages, formation of a new access and associated works at land west of Owlwood House, West Lane, Stillington, North Yorkshire, on behalf of Ambleside Homes. And I think, Connor, you're presenting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Connor Harrison, Senior Planning Officer at the former Hambleton office. In terms of updates, we've had a few updates since the publication of the report. The first one was a comment from the agent noting that in the report it states that plot 1 doesn't have any gable end windows. In fact, it does. It has 2. One serves a bedroom and one serves a landing. In response, we have said that the landing window, due to the fact that it's a sort of transitional space, it's unlikely to cause any immediate impact to neighbouring properties. However, the one within the bedroom does have the potential to cause an immediate impact, and therefore a condition should be attached to ensure that that's obscurely glazed for the lifetime of the development. We've also had a response from the Highway Authority. So following the publication of the report, the highway consultee comments came in. Broadly speaking, those conditions that were attached were consistent with what was already attached to the report. However, the wording of condition 7 has been amended to reflect the condition that was given to us by highways. Further, they have provided comments with regards to the possibility of a footway and the alteration of the 60 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour zone. They have said that it's something that they would support, assuming that it was fully consulted on, etc., etc. But that it's not necessarily something that is an absolute requirement within the scheme. The rural housing officer also fed back to us in response to some questions regarding the commuted sum. So there was some discussion within the visit as to what happens to commuted sums following payment. They are kept within the former Hambleton district as far as we are aware. So they don't go to the parish or the ward, but they are kept within the former district. There was also you can see in the update list the means in which commute sums are calculated. Unfortunately, due to the fact that I didn't have the average purchase price available for the locality, I wasn't able to come up with an exact figure for that commuted sum. But you can see in the table on the next page that it's going to be calculated on the basis of a 1-bed, 2-person dwelling, so 50 square meters. And that's to be linked within the section 106 as well. I think that's it. I think that is everything in terms of updates. I'll just go on to okay, can I have the next slide, please? Oh, that's fine. So as already been mentioned, the applications for 8 dwellings at land west of Alwood House, Stillington. You can see here the western edge of Stillington, and despite the fact that it's in relatively close proximity to the settlement, is considered to be set within the open countryside. Stillington's built form is considered to end at Townend Pond and West View, which are to the west and southwest of the site, respectively. To the west of the site, there's the Shippens, which is a development which followed on from a prior notification, Class Q approval. And to the east is Alwood House. To the north is open countryside, with the field itself forming part of the medieval strip field system that typifies the area immediately abutting northern Stillington. The key policy consideration in terms of principle is policy S5, which discusses the council's approach to development within the countryside, within the former Hambleton area, and this will be balanced against the need for affordable housing in the Stillington area. The policy, that is S5, largely discourages the siting of development within the open countryside and so requires weighting against that. The site is, just to return to the built form, within around 24 metres of the built form. There was an application for housing on the site, which was refused in 2018. This was a lesser scheme and it followed a more linear pattern. However, it was refused based on a failure to reflect the character and form of the settlement, and also because of it represented an extension of the village into the open countryside. Since then, the Shippens has been converted, and to an extent, this changes the perception of the western approach and area of the village. Next slide, please. So the site itself is a field formerly associated with the field to the immediate north, from which it's been divided by a post and rail fence and hedging, and is currently left as a grass field. As you can see from the slide, it is relatively even in terms of land levels. There's a large oak tree to the northwest corner of the site, which is to remain, with the remainder of the boundaries planted to an extent, the southern and eastern boundaries being the most substantially complete in terms of hedgerow. The northern boundary consists of a short post and rail fence with immature hedgerow, and the western boundary hedge is rather sparse, but is also in the process of being planted up. The access, as you can see, is currently to the southeast of the site. Next slide, please. So just as a quick note, because it did come up, the site is within grade 3 in terms of the agricultural land classification. So this map shows you that it's very close to the boundary with grade 2, which is that line running through the centre of the map, but it is within grade 3. Not entirely sure what the subclade is, whether it's 3A or 3B, but it's not grade 2. Next slide. So, as said, the application is for 8 dwellings. This includes 2 affordable units marked out on the slide to the southeast of the site. I've got a blue shape on them. There's a mixture of proposed dwelling sizes in terms of bedrooms: 1 1-bedroom unit, 4 2-bedroom units, and 2 3-bedroom units, and another 1 4-bedroom units. The proposed tenure for the affordable units has 1 unit being offered as a discount market dwelling and another for social rent. There is a cumulative sum to be secured by Section 106 for the remaining 0.4 affordable units required for compliance with the Affordable Housing Policy, HG3. Part of the proposal is to alter the existing access, which would be closed up, and shifting it further to the west of the site, which is within the 60-mile-an-hour zone. However, highways have not objected and, as mentioned previously, have provided a series of conditions to ensure that the proposal will not harm highway safety. The overall design of the proposal is to represent a converted farm and associated buildings, and with some interplay between the site and the shippings in terms of design. You can see that the building line follows that of Elwood House to the south and the northern extremity of the shippings to the north. The nearest property to the site is Elwood House, which is approximately 9.66 metres distant from the gable end of Unit 1. You can see that marked out on the plan, on the map there rather. Dwellings within the shippings will be also relatively close at 19 metres from Units 7 and 8 respectively. As discussed previously, due to the position of gable ends and attached conditions, and 19 metres in the case of the shippings. It's considered that distances and the design take into account neighbour amenity relatively well, and therefore is not a conflict with policy E2. Next slide, sorry. So this is just a series of site sections and a street scenes showing the existing site. The upper image shows the street scene from West Lane, to the south, I should say. Next slide, sorry. So this recreates the existing slide with regards West Lane, but shows the screening that we provided by the established hedgerow, and which mitigates the visual impact of the development somewhat. There is a condition within the report that requires the retention of that hedgerow. Next slide. So these are the affordable units. As you can see, they're broadly similar in appearance to the remainder of the scheme. The bottom right-hand image shows you the gable end that I've previously discussed and the first floor windows. So it's proposed that the leftmost of these, which is the bedroom window, is conditioned to be obscurely glazed to preserve neighbour amenity. As you can see, on the bottom left, there is a window to the right, on the north. There is a window to the right on the right-hand dwelling, and that's another bedroom window. So the bedroom window to be obscurely glazed wouldn't necessarily result in a complete loss of outlook for that bedroom. Next slide. So this is just an example of the proposed designs, and Just next slide, sir. Keep working through here. So as you can see, there's a number of faux agricultural elements that have been incorporated into the scheme to provide visual interest and to tie into that design. So these are just the garages and the various boundary treatments involved in the scheme. So here you can see the southern and eastern site boundaries here, both of which are well established. The house you can see here is Alwood House, and this shows the setback of the proposed houses from the road, as they're to be parallel to it. Next slide, sir. So this is the northeastern view looking northeast out of the site. It shows the open countryside and also the hawthorns and ash trees, two dwellings, both of which are approximately 45 metres distant from the site to the northeast rather. Next slide. This is just another view showing the relationship between the site and the countryside. So this shows both the poor quality of the western hedgerow and also some of the properties on the shippons adjacent to the site. And this shows the current access and some more of the screen to the south. That is West End there and associated houses on that terrace. So that is the built form of Stillington. And yeah, if you just keep going. So the previous slide was another house involved in the shippings. This is the current access and how the site looks in terms of looking through it at present. And this is the approach into the village. So the shippings to the left, and beyond that, the site and Alwood House, Town End Pond, etc. Obviously, the proposed access is to be closer into the access associated with the shippings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor. We have a number of speakers, so I'll ask you to come forward in turn. So we have the objectors, Mr. Sykes and Ms. Armstrong. Mr. Sykes, if you'd like to come forward to the table and the seat in front. You have 1.5 minutes, I'm afraid, Mr. Sykes. If you can press the green button, it should. There's only one green button on the pad. The right hand button as you look at it, and it should light up red. Oh, sorry.
Oh, right.
Is it lit up? No.
My reason for objecting in this land, it is classification grade 2. Very good versatile agricultural land as described by Natural England on the government website. This land could produce high-yielding agricultural crops such as potatoes and carrots. Malton local plan stresses S5 building must not occur on 1, 2 or 3A. There is only 15% of grade 2 land in North Yorkshire, but there is 41% of grade 4 and 5, which is suitable for house building, not growing root crops. If this proposal is rejected, it will send a clear message to Hambleside Homes and other developers. Yes, we do want you to build homes, but not on good land. If it is passed, it will set a precedent and more building will appear on grade 2 soil. The loss will be irreversible if it's covered with houses, which will be a travesty. Once it's gone, it's gone. The new government food policy is food security, is national security. There's a scheme for 36 houses already and 9 affordable homes in South Back Lane, plus 8 brownfield sites with permission. There were 23 Stillington residents objecting to this proposal and only 2 supporting it. Also, the parish council voted 5-2 against the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sykes. Ms. Armstrong, would you like to come forward? And you have 1.5 minutes as well, I'm afraid. It is the button on the right of the keypad, which is green.
Yep.
Thank you.
From their first floor windows, the occupants would be afforded a view of 90% of our garden, as shown hatched in red on the document that we have provided you with. We lose all our privacy. If this planning proposal is approved, we look to the planning authorities to protect our privacy. We request that the current plans for the estate be amended so that the two-story buildings of plots 1, 2 and 3 be moved towards the centre of the site and the plot 4 bungalow be built alongside us with suitable spacing from our boundary so that the overshadowing and overlooking of our property and garden be minimised. This would not be to the detriment of the site's design, but would make all the difference to us. I have spoken to the developers re this on a site visit to our property, and in conjunction with the plans, I explained our concerns re the overbearing presence of the houses on our lives. They were taken aback and agreed that it was indeed intrusive and said that they would go back to the architect to modify the plans to reduce the impact on ourselves. We hope that the committee back our request and ensure that the developer changes their plans accordingly to reduce the impact of them on our lives.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Saddington. Saddington, you have 3 minutes. It is the right hand button, the green button on the microphone pad.
Good morning, everyone. I'm speaking in support of the application today. Peter Manderfield established Ambleside Homes in 2001 and has achieved a reputation for delivering exemplary developments in and around Easingwold, including White Bear Farm on Back Lane and the Shippens on West Lane, both within Stillington. I've acted as Ambleside's planning consultant for about 8 years now, and I'm proud to represent them. It's great to work for a developer who cares about design, build quality and leaving a legacy. Peter was brought up in Stillington and continues to have strong connections here, so he's particularly keen to deliver an excellent development for the village. Peter became aware of interest in the application site from housing associations and others, but managed to jump in and secure an option with the landowner, which I believe is great news for Stillington, because I know that if we're successful today in securing planning permission, Ambleside Homes will deliver a scheme that everyone can be proud of. In a market dominated by volume house builders, sustainably located sites like this one are extremely hard to come by. Small house builders are closing at an alarming rate, and successive governments have stated an intention to reverse this trend. The proposed development would increase the choice and availability of new homes in Stillington and provide a mix that would benefit local people, including bungalows, smaller 1 and 2 bed units and affordable homes. The proposed housing would be built to very high standards and provide jobs for local tradesmen and suppliers. In terms of the design, our aim is to create an aesthetically pleasing scheme that stands the tests of time. The proposed layout combines a traditional cottage style properties at the front of the site with a mews arrangement to the rear, which reflects the characteristics of a traditional farmstead. The layout would preserve views of the open countryside to the north through the site, and we've taken great care to maintain existing landscape features, whilst the scheme would deliver a 10% gain in biodiversity. Public benefits include a SIL contribution of around £75,000, 2 affordable units on site and a commuted sum for the balance. As identified in the committee report, Stillington hasn't been benefited from any additional affordable homes since 2014. and given the significant requirement for 1 and 2 bed units within the Easingwold sub-area, significant weight can be attributed to this aspect. Finally, I'm pleased to note there are no technical objections to the scheme, and I believe that the proposed development would bring benefits to the village and can be approved under your adopted policies. So I would therefore urge you to support the officer's recommendation to grant consent today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Connor, do you want to make any comments on any of the matters raised by presentations?
Could I just clarify the wording of policy S5 in relation to best and most versatile land? Thank you. So it's just the exact wording in the policy. I'm reading from the Hambleton local plan in terms of best and most versatile land states that where significant development in the countryside is demonstrated to be necessary, the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land classed as grades 1, 2 and 3A should be avoided where possible. If the benefits of the development justify the loss, areas of the lowest grade available must be used except where other sustainability considerations outweigh agricultural land quality considerations. So I think officers are of the view that the proposal isn't, in our view, considered to be significant development. Members were at the site on Monday and could see the size and scale of the site, which isn't a major development in planning terms. So we've taken the view that the development isn't considered to be significant development in the countryside. That's the officer view. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Connor, is there anything you wanted to come back on as well?
Yes.
Thank you. So just to clarify, there are 36 houses currently being applied for as part of the development of South Back Lane. However, they still haven't been approved. It's still in discussions. It is an allocation, but it still doesn't really factor into the decision at present, as it's all not signed off yet. In terms of how E2 works with regards to policy E2, which is the amenity policy, sorry, with regards to overshadowing and overlooking, that tends to be when it comes to amenity space, gardens, etc. It tends to apply more strongly where there's only a very limited amount of amenity space attached to a property. So say for instance, you've got a very small garden or a yard, and that's going to be completely overshadowed or overlooked. If there's a relatively large amenity space, as in Alwood House, then it's harder to wield that as a reason for refusal.
I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Burr, please.
Thank you. You briefly touched on a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. First of all, best and most versatile. There seems to be some disagreement whether it's grade 2 or grade 3. Grade 3, grade 2, what actually is it? And also, are our planning officers happy with the proximity guidance, because obviously an objector is quite concerned about the proximity. So what is the general guidance, and are we within that? Is there tolerance to that, etc.? Thank you.
So with regards to the grade 2, grade 3 question, the map that's been provided here as part of the pack that we've been given this morning is based from a Natural England map, which is at a 1 to 50,000 scale. So for matters such as this, particularly in areas where it's right on the boundary, as you saw on the slide, it's not the most precise thing. The screenshot I took is from a government website. It's from there. They've got a mapping service where they're trying to collate all various pieces of relevant information for planning, and that's where it's from. So I can say with reasonable certainty that it is grade 3. In terms of the distance guidance, it tends to be based primarily on front to front or back to back, primary windows and primary windows. Gable to gable doesn't benefit from the same degree of protection as those sort of relationships between properties. So the 9 metre gap between, I think you can see actually in the pack, it appears from this rendering anyway that it's a relatively significant distance. And I think in terms of how that would fit, say, in a standard housing estate or something to that effect, that would be a reasonable gap between gables. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And obviously one of the major issues in this is the impact on Alwood House. It's just a question around those two windows in the gable end. Accept the landing one, but I'm a little bit concerned, obviously, about putting obscure glass into a bedroom window. I don't think that's normal practice. I don't think it's good practice. So I just have some concerns around that. I know you mentioned there's a secondary window in the bedroom, but I just think putting obscure glass into a bedroom window is not something that I'm comfortable with.
So the window to the south would be the primary window for all intents and purposes, and it being a south-facing window would benefit from quite a lot of light. I've spoken to the developer and the agent with regards to the window, and they have indicated that they'd be reasonably happy for those to be removed if that was the committee's wish. But frankly, obscure glazing it achieved the same purpose. So it's something that can be accommodated.
I think for us, I agree, Councillor Taylor, that we wouldn't normally seek to opaque glaze bedroom windows because they're principal rooms. I think the reason that it's acceptable for myself is because there is another main principal window that faces over the road, the front of the property, which is what normal properties have. Very many bedrooms. I'm just thinking of my own, for instance, have one big main window at the front. So because there is that, we feel that it would be appropriate in this instance to obscure glaze. That would still allow light through as well as the main principal window. But, you know, given the concerns that are being raised with regard to privacy and overlooking into the neighbouring dwelling, which are reasonable from a principal room window, we feel that would ensure the privacy of those people if it was obscure glaze. So it is a bit of a balance, but I think it hinges on the bedroom having a main window is the view that I've taken. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else? I have one. And we discussed this at the site visit, and that's about the connectivity of the site into the village, and the fact that the development access, if it does proceed, is beyond the 30-mile-an-hour limit of the village. So we've got ostensibly a housing estate, if you like, small unit of housing that will exit and enter off a 60-mile-an-hour road, but so will the pedestrians. And so that for me was a significant concern, that we've got no connectivity with the village because there's no footpath. And I hear what you're saying about the highways report, but for me, you know, we're looking at a development where there may be children that go to the school and no footpath for them to access the village. So that's an issue for me. I'd had hoped that there might be some access in one of the corners that would have allowed them to walk on the wide verge, which is outside the property of is it Alwood House? And that it's not ideal, but it's better than walking on a 60-mile-an-hour limit road. And certainly, if I was in the village, I would be pursuing an extension of the 30-mile-an-hour limit to beyond the Shippens. But those are just comments for me to to make, and I'm sorry, because I know we've covered it and I know highways have covered it, but it is of a significant concern for me. This into debate. Councillor Andrews.
It was just a comment about the two windows on the gable end. You've mentioned the bedroom. There is also the landing, if you like. Could that be obscured as well? I know it's not a primary window, but I do think any sort of view onto somebody else's garden. I know under the planning thing, but as a matter of courtesy, sort of thing.
Yes, but not the. 2 seconds, and I'll just consult the update list.
Missed that then.
Sorry, so the condition only refers to the bedroom principle because there is a direct planning reason to do that. I think it would be then up to the developer to accommodate that. I think, as I've said, the developer and the agent have indicated that they'd be quite flexible in terms of how to tackle the issue of the windows on the gable. So it's something that certainly can be asked for, and I believe would get a degree of support from the agent and developer.
So I think in respect of imposing additional conditions, I think I'd probably just like to sort of say to members that we must remember that if we impose conditions, one of the tests of imposing conditions is that they are necessary in order to grant planning permission. So the officer view that is that it wouldn't be necessary in order to grant planning permission on the basis that it's not a primary window, it's a landing window, it's not a principal room, it's a an area, yes, and for that reason we've taken the view that therefore it's not necessary to impose a condition in order to grant planning permission. It's just to clarify the use of conditions and the view that the officers have taken in regard to that window.
Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, just I know you stated that the developer was open to, if they were minded, the windows could be removed, and better to have some light, I think, coming through from that side than no light at all. If the members were, if this was in the balance, that's all I'm flagging up.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to put some context around this application. Obviously, it's been quite emotive. It's been one of the reasons it's been brought here today is because of the public interest, and you've seen that today from representations. I think it's important to note, and this is a big issue for me, it's already been alluded to. This development is going to sit in a 60-mile-an-hour stretch of highway. There's no street lighting, there's no footpath, and we expect children to walk. It's going to be a residential development with families, and we expect children to walk to school. That for me is a major issue. I was a little bit concerned. We got the highways report, I think, at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and it talks about us having to do a consultation on the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Well, with all due respect to highways, that's a little bit difficult at this late 12th hour. So I do have an issue with that. The footpath for me is a no-brainer. I'm not prepared to support something that has children walking in an unlit 60-mile-an-hour stretch of road. And let's be right, that road carries a heavy density of traffic. It's the link road to the A64. It has articulated vehicles. We saw that on the site visit. So I do have some issues. Obviously, the major impact is on Alwood House. I am minded to push for the removal of those two windows if the developer is minded to do that. I think that would resolve the major objections that we've got there. But the road safety and highways issues are a major issue for me. And until I'm not happy to support it until we've got those issues resolved. And I am minded to defer this application so we get those issues covered, because if we grant it and don't get them, we're unlikely to get them. I know, these things move slowly. So we've got to get those in as a preemptive, issue before we sign this off. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Napton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would second Councillor Taylor's proposal to defer this application. The 60 mph access to me is unacceptable. You cannot expect pedestrians, etc., to be, excuse me, walking onto a 60 mph road. There is no footway. There is no street lighting, as Councillor Taylor has said. And it is on a bend, albeit not a very tight bend, but there is a bend in the road there as well. And it's a fast road, and it uses heavy goods vehicles use it all the time because it is a link to the A64, and we saw that again on the site visits. So I like the development. I like the planning style of it. I think it's sympathetic with the village. I don't have an issue with the land. I don't have an issue with the location. Once the shipping was done, that ship had sailed as far as that being the extent of the village. So I'm happy with the location, but I would like to see a deferral in order that a 30 mph extension to the zone is secured, that a footway is secured, or a footway solution is secured, and that the 2 windows in the gable end are removed, because I don't see the point of them. Most bedrooms have 1 window. It's a south-facing window. Why? And most stairways don't have a window in. So why? So with those 3 things in mind, I'd second deferral, Chairman.
Councillor Burr.
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, I am very happy with the deferral, but what I would like to say is that I think that the call-in and this particular application being brought to this committee is really a fundamental part of what local members actually do bring to the planning process, because hopefully we will get an outcome eventually which is fit for everybody, whereas this could have actually, if it hadn't have been called in, it could have maybe been approved with those concerns to the local member, and obviously to us now it's been brought to our attention. So I think what it has highlighted is that it is really good to get local members' input, but I'm very happy with deferral.
Like colleagues, I was very concerned when we did the site visit. We had to walk on the grass verge to get to the site, and the road was very, very busy. When it was pointed out to us that the entrance and exit to the development would be beyond the 30-mile-an-hour limit, that really did flag something up with me, that it was going to be very dangerous coming in and out of that, given that it is also fairly near a bend, and looking west, you wouldn't have a long sight of vehicles. So like my colleagues, I think we need to get the highways to sort out the issues there before this can go ahead.
I travel this route most weeks, and sometimes twice and 3 times a week. So I'm very well aware of the entry and exit into and out of Stillington from various different angles. And it does concern me that this development would be beyond the 30-mile-an-hour limit in where the national speed limit would apply. It is a very well-used road, as has been said, so that does give me a concern. The other concern is there is a very large tree in the field, which I think probably for the protection of the tree should be TPO'd, and we need to make sure we've got root protection in place when the site's developed. And I'm sorry I missed that earlier, but like my colleagues, I think there are issues with this that we need to iron out before we can take it any further. in general, I'm in favour of the principle of the development, but actually I think it's incumbent on us as local members to make sure what we do is right, and right not only for the developer but for the village itself as well, and the future residents. So I am happy. It has been moved by Councillor Taylor, I think, and seconded by Councillor Napton for deferral, and I'm going to ask members if they will please vote for that deferral on the basis that we need to sort out the window, the fenestration in the gable end, and the speed limits and the footway. Is that? Oh, and the tree. Sorry. The tree protection. Okay, can we? Sorry, Anne, did you want to come back?
I'd just like to comment on the TPO matter. So we do have a separate process where we can consider a request for a TPO. So that would run outside of the planning application process. The planning application process, we would consider the potential impact on the tree from the proposed development and whether the tree would be impacted on, and we can seek to safeguard that tree during construction, and we can seek to safeguard it as part of the development. That would be the planning application process. We also at the Hambleton office offer a separate tree TPO request process that goes through a separate process with our arboricultural officers at the Harrogate office, and we can take that as a request for that process. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, it's members, sorry, we're going to move to the vote for deferral. Can we have a show of hands, please? Okay, the deferral is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Connor. We need to move on now to item 5. If you don't wish to stay, please do feel free to leave. Thank you. Councillor Burr. We did apologies. Yeah, we've done apologies. Yeah, we got him. Yeah. Item 5 is application number ZB24/01032. Oh, sorry, Councillor Napton.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. Can I just declare a non-pecuniary interest on the same basis as I did for Stillington? I'm the clerk to Orme Parish Council, so any correspondence is on behalf of the council and not myself.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, application ZB24/01032 proposed change of use of existing tourism accommodation to a dwelling house at Oakley Cottage, Oakley, Olm Station, York, North Yorkshire, on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Butterworth. Again, we have a speaker on this, who is the applicant stroke agent, and when the time is right, I'll ask you to come forward and you'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. So, Connor, is this you again? It is. Connor, do carry on, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Fewer items in the update list, thankfully, this time. We had a response from the agent just talking about the attempts to market the dwelling and giving some further background on that, which you'll have seen in the update list was bolstered by the inclusion of 2 letters from the applicant's accountants, in which to give a more full financial picture of the holiday let and the circumstances surrounding it. Further to that, I did a response within that that essentially said that whilst we have those letters and they've advised and the accountant has advised the applicants as to the unviability of the holiday let. This was first done in 2018, and so it doesn't really take into account any variations in the market, i.e. post-COVID tourism boom, etc., which have happened since. And as a result, we haven't been able to verify the redundancy of that use if it's not been actively marketed since 2018. The agent then did respond to that last night, so I have a verbal update where they've said that the as part of that pack, a letter dated the 21st of October this year does take into account variations in the market, and that it demonstrates that a marketing exercise has been undertaken. And from looking at that marketing exercise, it appears to be largely around the sale of the cottage as a business rather than marketing it as a unit for rent, effectively. They do point out that there was an oversupply of this sort of development during and after the COVID-19 period, and they say that demand has now fallen away, but obviously this hasn't been demonstrated on an individual basis with this unit. Thank you.
Okay, right. Technical issue resolved for the time being, so we will move back to Connor and your presentation. And I'm sorry, I'm going to sit with my back to some of you, but I've no longer got my machine.
Right. So the application is for the change of use of an existing holiday let to form a single dwelling at Oakley Cottage on Station. The site is within the open countryside, but is currently ancillary to Oakley Cottage, which is the building shown to the right of the application site, or rather the east of the application site, and is within domestic land associated with that dwelling. So you can see the relationship more clearly. Well, both are adequate, but you can see it clearly there. To the west of the site is the East Coast Main Line, which can be seen on the location plan to the bottom left. The key policy consideration in terms of principle is policy S5 again, which discusses the council's approach to development within the countryside within the former Hambleton area. This policy largely discourages the site and development within the open countryside, but allows an exception for the conversion of buildings. This is dependent on the site's ability to meet the requirements of S5F and S5G. There is some question as to whether the proposal represents a true conversion due to the lack of building works and the fact that it would fall within the same use class as a dwelling anyway. They're holiday lets and dwellings are both use class C3. Additionally, there's questions regarding the unviability of the site as you have heard in the update list, there's some question as to how that's been marketed and whether that's been marketed in a way that meets the requirements of the policy. There was an application for the same proposal on the site, which was refused in 2019 by the Planning Committee and was then dismissed at appeal. The refusal and dismissal was based on the immediate impacts stemming from the proximity of the railway to the house and to the holiday let rather, and the unsustainable location of the proposal, given that it's in the countryside. Since then, work has been done to ensure the soundproofing of the property, and Environmental Health are now happy that all that would need to be done in order to secure residential amenity would be the addition of acoustic fencing, which can be applied via condition. Next slide, sir. So this is the existing site plan. There's a shared access arrangement, and that will remain within the proposed scheme. Next slide, sir. So this shows the proposed plan, including the amenity area and parking. It's considered to be an appropriate scale to the proposed dwelling. There's adequate amenity space for a 2-3-bedroom house included in there. And it's anticipated that parking and access wouldn't be an issue in terms of highways safety. Next slide, sir. So these are the proposed and existing elevations. As you can see, it's quite a conventional design. It's perfectly adequate to be used as a dwelling. Likewise, the floor plan shows that it's of a scale that is appropriate to its use as a dwelling. So this is the holiday. It's quite attractive and is well suited to either the current use or the proposed use. Likewise, this slide. Next slide, sorry. Go into it. And down one again. Oh, it's okay. So the relationship between Oakley Cottage and the site is such that its use as a full-time dwelling is not likely to be any residential amenity impacts on either structure. One of the policy issues was achieving an improvement to the immediate setting of the site. As you can see from the slides, the site is currently attractive and well maintained, so it's been difficult to try to demonstrate a material improvement in the immediate setting of the site. Emphasis on immediate there because that's the test within the policy. That's likely due to the proposal falling outside of the intended beneficiaries of the policy, which was largely intended to allow for the reuse of traditional farm buildings, etc., where these sorts of gains are more easily acquired. Next slide, sir. That is the view looking west towards the railway line. And that's just an image of the access to the site. As you can see, it can adequately serve both properties without causing any highway safety issues. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. We do have a speaker, and that's Mr. Cunningham, who I think is the agent or the applicant. Do you want to come forward, Mr. Cunningham? It's the button on the right hand side. It's a green button. You have 3 minutes. I will try and remind you when you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee members. My clients find themselves trapped in a planning policy void. As you know, the Hambleton local plan supports applications for barn conversions in rural areas. However, the policy void exists where a structure has been converted to serve a purpose that, years later, becomes unviable. We have robustly evidenced the non-viability of the tourism accommodation in the information presented to the Council in the original and current applications, and through the additional information presented in the update list. Members' attention is specifically drawn to the 2024 Accountant's Letter, which directly addresses the officer concerns which have been omitted from the printed officer response in the update list. To find a way forward, in the 3 years between 2021 and 2023, with different estate agents, my clients tried to sell the holiday cottage. There was no interest in the building as tourist accommodation. As a tourist enterprise, it was considered unviable. My clients find themselves in an impossible position. They were unable to change the use of the building in 2019. They were unable to continue with the tourist accommodation as a viable business, and they have been unable to sell the tourist accommodation either separately or as one lot with the main house. This application represents a final attempt to find a future use for the cottage. In truth, Oakley Cottage and the more than 50 houses at Orne Station, many of them new developments, are part of and not isolated from Orne. They are a 5-minute cycle ride from the village centre, and the cottage itself requires no improvement to its environment because it is not a barn, it's already converted to a house. I understand that members must take care to ensure that their judgment today doesn't set a precedent. However, this tourist accommodation is unviable. Despite determined marketing attempts by different estate agents, there has been no interest, and so for approaching 6 years, the cottage has remained empty. The building needs a future viable use. As an unrestricted dwelling house, the cottage would provide much needed rural housing, affordable because of its smaller size, and in a location which, had the original structure not been converted, the policy would have supported. Additionally, allowing the cottage to become a home is wholly in line with the central government's key post-election aim to stimulate the delivery of homes throughout this country. For these reasons, we would welcome the granting of this application for planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to open this up to officers if you've got any comments about what you've heard.
No, I think it's been addressed via the discussion regarding the update list.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members? No. Can I just clarify? There's a couple of things which I'm slightly uncomfortable with. The suggestion that the policy is for barn conversions. Am I right in thinking this wasn't a barn, this was a garage that was converted and not a barn? And
that's my understanding, yeah.
The correspondence which has been referred to, which I think came from the accountant with regard to marketing, etc. Am I correct in understanding we only got it last night?
No, give me 2 seconds.
Sorry,
No, that's fine. I believe we received it on Tuesday afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
Yeah. Are we in debate? Sorry, Chairman. Okay.
And then I'll move it into debate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. So this is a strange one. The policies don't really fit the actual on-the-ground situation. This property has been converted several years ago. It exists. It is empty. I have visited it several years ago. It I think, as Connor alluded to, it absolutely fits the specification of a normal dwelling, not just a holiday let. It's repeatedly been marketed to sell it as a holiday let, no interest, because I think the issue is its proximity to the railway track, something I would be a fan of, but I understand many people may not. But the soundproofing has been increased and will be increased. However, as a normal dwelling, the market will take care of that. Some people will enjoy living near a train track, others won't, and the market will take care of that, and the price that's obtained when it is sold at some future date will sort this out. So what we're left with, members, is an empty house, a nice empty house that needs somebody to live in it. It's not going to be used as a holiday let. It's just an empty dwelling, and given the pressures we have on delivering homes, and also the pressures we get about people complaining about the numerous the amount of holiday lets there are, as opposed to places for our residents to live. So what I would ask members to do is, I completely respect Connor's position on the policies, but in this instance, given that the property exists, it's ready for somebody to go and live in, please treat this as an exception to policy. We're not making a precedent here. It's an exception to policy because of the exceptional circumstances that exist on the ground, and therefore I will propose that we approve this application.
Councillor Burr.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Napton and I haven't shared notes, so there we go. So I'd like to say that I think that this application is entitled to actually be brought forward. And I do think that quite a lot of our policies are probably broken and out of date, not fit for purpose. We do have a new government who want us to try and solve our housing situation. Now, I personally, and it's only a personal matter, I'm not concerned really with the evidence and has this been done and has that, because my thoughts are, if this had have come to me at a planning committee, I would have passed it for a residential dwelling. So that's my views to start off with. Now, what we're being told nearly every single week is that we don't like holiday lets. We don't want holiday lets anymore. We want local people in houses. So as Councillor Napton says, we've got an issue here because it doesn't fit. So that's my thoughts for saying some of our policies are totally out of date. So I personally, on that basis, would say that this needs to be brought back to be a residential dwelling And as you say, I quite live near trains, but it's up to the person who buys it if they like it or if they don't. And I do think that as committee members, we need to be open to change, and we need to think about what is needed and required now. And I do feel for our officers, but our officers give us advice and we make the decisions. So I think I would very much like to second it, that it should be a residential dwelling. And I think we've got to do what's best for our area and bring as many dwellings into being as we can. So I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I had the benefit of doing a site visit on this one when it first came up in Hamilton, I think 5 or 6 years ago now. It is a stunning property. There's no doubt about that. It's not your archetypal holiday home. Just for sort of context, there's been since that this application originally went in, there has been a development just down the road of a residential development which is similarly adjacent to the railway line. All those properties have been sold without a problem. I think the case is made out. There is extenuating circumstances on this occasion. You've got to treat each one its merits, but I think on this case, the case is made out. There is extenuating circumstances to divert from policy, and I will be supportive of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Baker.
What I'm concerned about is we've had numerous planning applications come to this committee since I've been on it for holiday lodges in the countryside, using up the countryside. And the argument has been we need that for our tourism. So now we've got somebody saying we can't use it for tourism. We haven't been able to market for tourism. So I'm at a loss as to why, on one hand, we're making approvals for holiday lodges in open countryside, I hasten to add, and at the other side, we're saying, well, so I get that the market might have changed for holiday accommodation, but you see what I'm trying to say, and that's why I agree with the officer's recommendation, because I think for whatever reasons, this may not have been marketed properly, and that's not for us to decide. But I can't equate that at this committee we're saying there isn't the market for a holiday cottage, and only a couple of weeks ago in an area close to this, we were looking at a development of 5 holiday lodges.
Councillor Burr.
Could I just come back there? I absolutely respect everything that Councillor Baker says, but lodges and brick-built dwellings are very, very different. They're a very different beast. But I do take her point of what she said.
Councillor Napton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I respect Councillor Baker's point of view. I think the exception in this case is, I think as Councillor Burr says, this is a brick-built dwelling. It is more than a lodge. It's not really what I would consider a holiday let that I commercially would set about trying to build now. It would be a very different offer, a lodge, etc. That it would do. So I think it in this particular circumstance. In this particular circumstance, as Councillor Taylor said, it's just this one-off particular circumstance that I think we should step outside policy.
Thank you very much for that, members. You give me a real dilemma because Councillor Baker is quite right. We are always saying we need holiday accommodation, and yet here we are looking at reversing a holiday accommodation into residential accommodation. I'm not sure, given that we have an appeal in front of us and the inspector dismissed the case in 2019, that there's been a material change to anything that the inspector found that made the application be dismissed. So that's one issue. We have an officer recommendation for refusal. We don't have any conditions if members go against the officer recommendation. So I think the sensible thing, I'm afraid, members, is to defer it, and I'm going to propose that we defer it while we work on this, because if you are minded to approve, we need those conditions in place, and we don't have those conditions. We've got nothing at the moment. So I think we should defer the application pending those conditions to be put in place, so that if members are minded to approve, we have the right situation. And I'm happy to take any input from the officers. Councillor Napton, do you want to come back?
Oh yeah, Chairman. I was just slightly confused as to what conditions there would be, given that it's all in place and done and exists.
So there's an environmental health response, which, as I've said in the presentation, talks about the need for acoustic fencing. So there are a few, but not a huge tranche of conditions to be applied. There's other various bits and bobs you could think about. Say, for instance, given that there's a relatively close relationship between the holiday let and Oakley Cottage, you might want to look at limiting permitted development rights in order to, if there's any, because the boundary between the two sites is relatively permeable, you might want to limit the ability to put, say, boundary walls up and so on, so that the access arrangements and so on remain unchanged for the lifetime of the development, that sort of thing.
I just wanted to clarify a view expressed, just so that that there's a full understanding. The application isn't to revert it back to a residential dwelling house and a single planning unit that it previously was. Yes, it was a double garage. As part of an existing one unit that received planning permission for a holiday use. So that would mean that you would have a single planning unit for a residential dwelling, and then a single planning unit for a holiday let. And therefore, if members wish to approve this application, there would be two dwellings in the open countryside. So I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a reverting back to an existing house that had previously been a single dwelling unit in the past. Just so that was clear. I think it might have just been the use of terminology. I just wanted to clarify that.
Councillor Burr.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just come back on that, thank you very much for that clarity. I was absolutely aware of what it was, and my clarification was that if it had come forward to me as a planning member, I would have voted for that to become a dwelling. So that was my terminology. But I do feel that there is such a shortage of houses, and this is a ready-made house. Now, I do appreciate that there maybe be some things that would have to be put in order regarding the ownership or selling, etc., etc. But that's really nothing to do with us. But I still stand by what I say. I think we've got such a shortage of houses, and we're here arguing, and there's one there ready to go, and we're here arguing because our policy, in my opinion, sometimes out of date and needs looking at, and we need some reform, and we can't give someone a home. So that's why I'm still pushing and still would be wanting to go forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Napton.
Yeah, I mean, my position remains the same, and I think the same as Councillor Burr's. However, in the interests of getting this over the line, then I will second your proposal, Chairman, to defer this so that we can dot the I's and cross the T's on the conditions, and hopefully it will be acceptable to all members.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Napton. On the basis that we're now in a deferral situation, and if no one else has any other comments, can we go to the vote, please? Do you want to come back, Anne? You're hovering. No?
No, I was just speaking to the solicitor there in that there is the possibility to be to grant planning permission subject to officers devising the planning conditions and then releasing a decision notice. There is that option at all, which was just flagged up with Kelly there.
Let me just speak to legal.
Technically, you can't grant the permission. You could give a minded view and delegate the authority to issue a decision to the planning
Members
officer.
happy with that?
What I think we just need to do, if you're going to do it that way rather than the deferral, is almost, I suppose, for the purposes of the minutes, it's to just have that narrative on, obviously, members are applying a different way or different material, applying the material considerations differently. Just wanted to clarify, because obviously your policy is not out of date.
No.
As a point of law, it is an in-date policy. However, what it is open to members to do is weigh your planning judgment and your scales differently, that there may be other material considerations that would outweigh that conflict with the plan. And I suppose wanted to put that out there as the clarification. So if you went back on defer, I was going to get that written up for you. So it's just to be clear that it's not an out-of-date plan. The plan policy applies, but it's how members then approach the planning judgment of this case and the material circumstances of this particular case.
Okay. So the question is, do we, in principle, approve subject to the various conditions? And we've given it a different planning way. Is that where you would prefer to be?
I would prefer that, Chairman.
Okay. So the vote is to
minded
to approve subject to conditions, and we've given it a different weighting of the planning
and delegation to the officers.
And delegation to the officers to conclude the conditions as necessary. Okay, happy? Can we go to the vote? Okay. 5-4. Anyone against? Councillor Baker against. Thank you. Sorry. Right, moving swiftly on. Application item 6, application ZB23/02394 outline, and this is an outline application for the erection of 20 number dwellings with all matters reserved except access, landscaping and layout. It is use class 3, including demolition of existing barn and associated infrastructure at land to the south of Prospect Cottages, Husthwaite, North Yorkshire, on behalf of C. Nicholson, RACJ Taylor. We do have a number of speakers. We have an objector, we have the applicant, and the division member, Councillor Baker, has a statement from the parish council who can't be with us. I think that's allowed.
Sorry.
That'd be allowed. Unless they have a Okay, Ash, do you want to present your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So starting with the updates, the first one I have was just a little tweak to the first reason for refusal. I won't read it out. It wasn't the addition of one word, just to change it from the historic form to the historic linear form. It just ties in better with the report, and I think honestly it was probably more a typo than anything else. And then was preparing for the meeting, I noticed on the site plan, that the visitor parking at the southeast section of the site appears to be blocking the access to Plot 8. So should members be minded to approve the application, this would need to be addressed in some way, either by alteration to the layout or the imposition of a relevant condition. And then I also note as well that we haven't actually received the final response from the lead local flood authority. But having reviewed the file, their previous responses have been mainly positive, so I wouldn't anticipate that they would be raising any issues at this stage. So it would just be subject to their final agreement that they're happy with the proposal. So I can move on to the presentation. As the chair mentioned, this is an outline application for the construction of 20 dwellings with access, landscaping and layout considered. It's a revised scheme following a refusal of an application for 22 dwellings, which was also dismissed at appeal. The site is located to the south of Prospect Cottages on the southeastern side of Hustwaite. And as you can see from the aerial view, the site is bordered to the north, west and east by hedgerow and to the south by further open fields. The site is currently accessed via Prospect Cottages to the north, and the site features an existing steel portal framed agricultural building. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the location of the site in relation to the conservation area, which is the purple line. As can be seen on the drawing, the conservation area excludes area of modern, unsympathetic, in-depth development at Prospect Cottages and at Kays Bank. The plan also shows the location of the public right-of-way to the south. This route affords views of the settlement as well as the wider landscape views towards the White Horse. Pick it up next slide, please. Here we can see the layout of the site. Layout is being considered at this stage, however, scale and appearance are still reserved matters. This shows the access road will join to Prospect Cottages and continue south through the site. A shared driveway will provide access to the western part of the site. Public open space will be provided within the site on the western side of the access road, and a green buffer is proposed to the southern boundary. Parking is mostly provided to the side or rear of properties. According to the applicant, the site has been laid out with development stepped back from the access road to mitigate the impact on the view into the site and therefore the impact on the conservation area. This does not, however, address that the proposal does not respect the linear form of the settlement, a point which was also made by the inspector in their decision. Although scale is not being considered, a mix has been provided which indicates 1 one-bedroom dwelling, 11 two-bedroom dwellings, 5 3-beds and 2 4-beds. As the development results in harm to the significance of the conservation area, the applicant has proposed 1 additional affordable home above the policy requirement and 2 self-built plots. The affordable dwellings are marked by an asterisk on this plan, and the self-builds are on the southeast corner of the site. Can I have the next slide, please? So moving on to the photographs. This first one shows the site from the entrance to Prospect Cottages, which demonstrates that view through to the countryside from the conservation area. Next slide, please. And this is further into Prospect Cottages. Here you can see the topography of the site, which rises up sharply to the south. Next slide, please. This is the point of access with the existing building shown. The site extends approximately halfway between the end of the hedgerow on the left and that small grey agricultural building at the rear of the site. Next slide, please. So this is just looking from the access towards the western boundary. Next slide. And this is further up the western boundary, towards the Nukin, which is on the other side of that boundary. And then next slide, please. So that will be the southern boundary. And that's from within the site looking north towards the access. Next slide, please. And then this is the view across the settlement towards the White Horse, which is taken from the public right of way. And then internally in the site, the eastern boundary. And then coming back out, this is the view back through Prospect Cottages towards the High Street. Next slide. And finally then, a view of the dwellings to the north side of the main street across from Prospect Cottages. On the left here, on the right here, we can see a gap through to the open countryside beyond demonstrating the relationship between the settlement and the countryside. In summary, it's considered that the proposal results in less than substantial harm to the significance of Hustwaite Conservation Area and the rural character of the village through loss of open space and unsympathetic in-depth character of development. This harm, which is permanent, is not considered to be outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme identified by the applicant, and the application is therefore recommended for refusal. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We will now pick up on speakers. So first of all, Mr. Smith.
Sorry.
Do you want to do?
Oh, sorry, Smith. No, sorry, I didn't spot them on both. No, it's Smith.
All right.
Sorry, I thought we were going straight
All
to
right.
the
Okay. Now, Mr. Smith, who's an objector. Mr. Smith, you've got 3 minutes. I will try and give you a heads up when you've got 30 seconds left. It's the green button or the button on the right of the microphone pad to turn it on. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Committee and Chair, for listening to me and hearing me today. My name's Cameron Smith. I've lived and worked in Hustwaite for over 30 years, and I speak on behalf of many of the objectors who are my neighbours. We object to the application on the following grounds. The site is an area of open pastoral land at the centre of the village and is the heart and lungs of Hustwaite. We have been an orchard village for centuries, and the site is home to rich and varied wildlife and plant life, including owls and bats. Development of this important open space would lead to a significant loss of habitat. The rural and open nature of the site on rising land contributes to the countryside setting of Hustwaite, and the existing layout of Prospect cottages allows views into this open land. If the site is developed, views from many aspects, including the footpaths used by villagers and visitors, would be harmed immeasurably. Hustwaite has a long linear layout, and the addition of 20 new dwellings in a suburban style development would completely be at odds with the historic pattern of our village and is simply too large. 11 houses have been built in the village over the last 3 years. And whilst we support organic growth within the existing layout of the village, we fear that allowing an inappropriate development of this scale and layout would overwhelm our village and set a dangerous precedent. The site access from High Street is via Prospect cottages. Congestion from parked cars in this area is already an issue, and introducing 40 or more cars for residents and service vehicles into the mix would be a dangerous impact on road safety. Visibility from the access would be poor, and we were worried about the increasing risk posed to road users and pedestrians. Hustwaite sits on a hillside. Lower parts of the village already suffer surface water runoff with high ground saturations. The site sits on several underground springs fed from Beacon Bank, and after heavy rain, the village drains fill quickly and overflow torrentially onto the lower parts of the High Street and the Nooking, where a natural basin is formed. Changing in the use of the site from absorbent agricultural land to housing development with hard standing, paving and residential structures would only worsen the drainage problems. So, in conclusion, this development would spoil the setting of the village, destroy a valued open space, worsen current drainage problems and pose a real road safety concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a statement from the parish council, which Nikki's going to read. The clerk's going to read the statement from the parish council. Thanks, Nikki. You might need to reset your clock.
Okay. The council apologises that no one was able. The council apologises that no one was able to attend today due to work and care commitments. It should in no way be taken to indicate a lack of concern about this application, which the council has objected to strongly for the same policy reasons identified by the planning officer and because a lot of residents asked it to do so at a well-attended public meeting, as they had done in relation to the previous very similar application, which was unsuccessful on appeal only last year. Other than those connected to the landowners, much of the support on the portal is not local, which is not surprising. As part of our ongoing project to create a neighbourhood plan, the Council very recently conducted a comprehensive survey to which over 60% of the total households in the parish provided a response. This is much higher than the average rate of about 20%. Asked what they valued most about Husthwaite, 142 out of 155 respondees chose the rural setting of the village, including its natural environment. Respondees also made it very clear that the most important issue that we need to address in our new plan is the location and design of new houses. 97 wanted to restrict any single development to a maximum of 5 houses and 41 said no more than 10, so there was very little support for anything of this size. In terms of location, the top 3 choices were previously developed land, infill between existing buildings and conversion of agricultural and other buildings, none of which apply here. Respondees also raised numerous concerns about road safety, lack of parking, surface water runoff, unreliable broadband and poor transport links. These are all relevant to this application. The 2022 Hambleton Plan promotes new housing in places where residents can easily access education, employment and vital services. We assume no site allocation was made for Husthwaite, unlike other designated service villages, because of the lack of a shop and the lack of decent transport links to key hubs, particularly at times required for commuter travel. We note that the applicant lists numerous bus stops in the village as an amenity, but a bus stop at which very few buses stop is of little value. We are acutely aware of the need to improve some services and will do what we can to address this. We are also using a government grant to have a housing needs assessment undertaken by experts. This should give us an accurate picture of what housing is currently required, as we are told that there is not always local demand for the existing social house in the village. The Council is keen to use the new plan to facilitate the new housing that is needed and to do so as part of a sustainable, well-designed development that the village can absorb without losing its essential character. And I've got 2 paragraphs left, but I will hand the paper back to you.
And finally, Mr. Roberts. Do you want to come forward and make your statement to the committee, please, Mr. Roberts? It's the green button or the one on the right to switch the microphone on. And if you start, I'll try and give you a 30-second countdown to the end.
Good afternoon, good morning, members. Still, apologies. Firstly, I would like to raise a wider constitutional point. As you're aware, we have 13 letters of support for this application, including families who are unable to get on the housing ladder or move back into the area. The Constitution, unfortunately, doesn't make allowances for supporters to speak at the committee. Therefore, there were a couple of people who would like to speak, but actually the permission was denied. Secondly, the matter of harm to the setting of the conservation area. We've submitted a heavily heritage-led design managed by Blue Willow Heritage to assess the significance and address concerns in light of the previous appeal decision. It is the professional opinion of the team and officers that there is less than substantial harm to the setting of the conservation area. So if there is less than substantial harm, the question is to weigh in the balance is, do the benefits outweigh that less than substantial harm? Well, if we go back to 2021, this site had planning for 20 houses. So this is pre the appeal. In the officer report for that permission, the officer stated, as required by the MPPF, the less than substantial harm has been weighed against the public benefits. It is found that the less than substantial harm is outweighed by the public benefits. I think that speaks for itself. The scheme comprises 50% specialist housing, including an over-provision of affordable housing, first-time homes to allow first-time buyers to purchase properties at a discount, homes no bigger than national space standards, so no massive mansions. These are proportioned for working families and people. So why should you as a committee potentially look at overturning the recommendation of your officer? Well, there is a precedent for this in Hustwaite. An application for 5 houses by Daniel Gath Homes on Highthorn Lane. This was recommended for refusal by the officer for the exact same reasons as this application. Only that application provided no affordable housing, and the resultant properties were so large they were unaffordable for many people. The predecessor to this committee decided that application did not harm the setting of the conservation area and approved it. Secondly, there is need for these housing for local people. No affordable housing data, unlike for Stillington and Hutton Rugby last week, was provided for need in this village. But information from North Yorkshire Home Choice shows 266 applicants seek a home in the Easingwold rural area within which Hustwaite lies. This is equivalent to almost 1/4 of the housing register. The village school is 57% subscribed. Failure to allow new families will see services like this close, such as at Ingleby Arncliffe. Members, there's a lot of press about the new North Yorkshire housing targets. You have here a site which delivers 50% specialist housing, 10% bungalows, 1-bedroom homes, open space, etc., etc., in a pretty expensive village within the district, which had planning only 3 years ago. I hope that we can have a look at this and potentially might consider taking the sensible course of action, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do officers want to come back on anything that they've heard? Yes, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. It's mainly really for the speaker's benefit. Constitutionally, there is the opportunity for someone to speak in favour of an application. Obviously, that goes to the agent or the applicant. Ordinarily, we have 1 speaker for, 1 speaker against. The parish and the division member are our constitutional allowed speakers. I just wanted to clarify that for his benefit.
Right. Do officers want to come back? Yeah.
I think the agent there mentioned that there was previous support in previous approval for this site, stating that they found no harm to the conservation area. But in that case, I would also like to point out that it was a different case for a start, and it had the support of the allocation at the time, which kind of gives you a different perspective on how you consider the harm to the conservation area, because the principle of development is already established. So at that point in time, the harm to the conservation area, or the ability to establish harm to the conservation area, has already been taken into account at the allocation stage, and it's weighed against the need at the time in providing the allocation. So that balance was already done during that process. So what the officer does during their assessment of the site is slightly different to what we're doing here, because we no longer have the allocation evidence to rely on.
I'm going to open it up for questions. Councillor Burr.
Yeah, is there any more update on letters of support and letters of objections? If you could just consolidate that would be really helpful. Thank you.
All of the public representations that we received were prior to the notifications going out for this, so there's no updates on that. It's all in the report.
Can I ask a question? I'd just like to get this clarified. So this site had previously been put forward under the site's allocations for the old Hambleton plan. We just need to get this right. And the permissions lapsed. There's been a new Hambleton plan. Can you, we'll go through this in bits and pieces. So just clarify when the new Hambleton plan was adopted, because it will have been through the process of examination with the inspectorate. So I need to understand that. I also need to understand that this site wasn't put forward in the new plan for allocation. It was. Would you think that was because they thought they already had permission? I just need to understand the process, because right now we've got a situation where it wasn't in the new Hambleton plan site allocation, and the policies have changed, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not mistaken, an inspector's already looked at this and said no. So I just need to understand what's going on, and I think we need to get it out into the open. Sorry, Ash.
I'm dying to answer. So the local plan was adopted in February 2022. And the permission for this site from memory lapsed, I think, in April 2022. So at the time that this plan was being considered by the inspector, this had an extant permission. It was counted in our numbers at the time in our housing land supply. So when the local plan was being considered, there was no need to carry this forward because there was permission in place. So it wasn't carried forward. It was up to the applicant really to implement the permission. Since the permission has lapsed, during the previous application that was already refused, I checked with the monitoring officer. When the permission lapsed, it was removed from the housing land supply. So it does not form part of our housing land supply anymore, which is still in excess of 8 years. Just have I covered everything there?
As has been stated, this is in my division. I was saddened we didn't get a site visit for this application, but the officers did explain and give a reason for that, but I think it would have helped us to see. Husthwaite, as intimated in their submission, Parish Council is one of my forward-looking parish councils. They're very on the ball about what they desire and what they want for their village in terms of development. We're supposed to encourage localism, as we've mentioned earlier, and as you have heard, they understand the housing needs of their community by the response that they've had to their survey. The location, scale and layout of this development is not in line with what the PC and their community want, and it would adversely impact the setting of the conservation area. I'm also very concerned that on one of the slides which showed the layout of the development, that there is a road going to the green belt on the south of the site. If you could go back to, I think it's the next one after that one. And as you can see from that one, there's plenty of land to the south. Oh, no, you've missed it. That one, that's the one. If you could just scroll up a little bit. That one, that's the one. You see, there's that road leading between those two properties that's going to the green belt. So I'm really, really concerned about that. So I would like to see us uphold the officer's recommendation, please, for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Napton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a difficult one because it's a balance between, excuse me, harm and public benefit. And I've had a good think about this this application for the last few weeks. There was an existing permission. That benefit had been tested, I believe. I don't think it's relevant that it was under slightly different circumstances. The impact on the conservation area is the impact on the conservation area, regardless of how it was under what policy it was. If the permission had been renewed, we wouldn't be sitting here. I'm unclear of the circumstances around that, but it did exist. And so looking at the scheme in front of us, there's a lot of public benefit. I mean, we've got an increase above the policy target on the affordable, which is very welcome. There are 2 new builds allocated. These are really innovative, I think. They've been very popular in Stillington. It gives people a real chance to manage their own projects and deliver housing at a reduced rate if they've got the skills required. So there's a lot to benefit. The screening to the south, I think it's south. I think will do a lot to address the issues around the public right of way, which lays further to the south. I think it's the south, the bottom anyway. So I think there's been a lot of mitigation in this. Access seems adequate through Prospect Cottages. Of course, there's always issues around parking with any development. This doesn't seem any different to any others in the district or in the county. So I think on balance, I would propose we approve this application simply on the public benefit offered, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. With regards to what Councillor Napton said, I think, yeah, if they'd built it at the time they had the planning permission, however, the policy has changed and the it was refused and it was upheld by the inspector. And from what I can see, what was said that was read out earlier, I don't think the village of Hustlethwaite are saying we don't want any building in our village, and they seem quite active on however long the neighbourhood plan will take to bring to completion. It was interesting to hear that they had actually taken advice, government advice, as to how they work out what and kind of housing is needed and where. So I don't think they're opposed to houses being built in their village. They just want it to fit with the policy that the council have already. So I have to disagree with Councillor Napton. I understand we need more housing. I just don't think that this possibly is in the right place and necessarily the right housing for the village. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, planning is very subjective, as we know. I mean, I'm minding, one of the big challenges we have in rural villages is getting young people to stay in the villages or have properties that they can afford. And I'm sympathetic to the application, but on the balance of probabilities, I just unfortunately can't support this one. I think it's a good scheme, but I think there are too many hurdles for us to get over that would allow me to support it. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Burr.
As a campaigner for houses in villages, to keep villages alive, to keep schools alive, I have enormous sympathy for this application. But it is not one house. This is a development, quite a large development. And what really concerns me is that the past history, which, whether we like it or not, we do need to take that into account. And Councillor Andrews is right, it would have been passed. And it is very disappointing that that application was not actually put into force. And whereas I've just advocated that we need to change and we need to be bold, which I absolutely agree, but there's actually jumping off a cliff and committing suicide. So you've got to be balanced about this. So I think that I will be supporting the local member on this one because I think it's just a jump too far. But I do urge the parish council or etc., and builders to relook and to try and put more houses in this village, because we need more houses in our villages for our villages to be sustainable and to survive.
Councillor Napton.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Burr makes some good points there, and I know she did mention about sustainability, and I don't think I really touched on my thinkings on that, but I do think that adds weight to the balance, in that when you look at the school provision and when you look at the bus stops, I know it was alluded to that bus stops don't make bus services, and I completely agree with that. However, bus services follow demand, and if the wider village wants to still have a primary school, a sustainable primary school, if the wider village wants to try and improve its bus services, etc., then the way forward is to get more young families into the village, which will come through the social housing, which will come through the self-build. So again, it's all about weighing up the public benefit, and I think Councillor Taylor's quite right, that's subjective. We've all got to make our own choices on that. So my scales are tipped, not over a cliff, just gently the other way. And that's just my thinking, Chairman.
And do you want to?
Councillor Napton's just been talking about there, is that this is more than a balancing exercise. Officers have identified less than substantial harm to the heritage asset, and therefore, in order for members to grant planning permission, in this case, should they choose to do so, they must be satisfied that the public benefits of granting permission outweigh the less than substantial harm identified. It to high bar rather than just a normal balancing exercise. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Can I just come back and I appreciate what colleagues have said. There is no other large housing estate development in this village. To date, most of it has been linear, infill. So this would be a novelty in this village, which the village have said they don't want.
You give me a real dilemma here, because I am looking at a lapsed permission which had every opportunity to take place. I'm looking at an appeal and it was only dismissed last year. I concur with Councillors Burr and Councillors Napton that smaller villages do need to grow, but they need to grow in an incremental way. And I'm not sure this is incremental. I think this is a big blob of development that I'm not sure is right for the village. I am also mindful of the heritage assets and the less than substantial harm. It's adjacent to the national landscape, and I've also got to give weight to that. It may not be in the national landscape. I don't know if we checked to see if it was, but it's certainly very close to the national landscape, and the bar for developing in national landscapes is higher than general. Having said all of that, I recognise the need for housing, the need to support schools and a sustainable village life. But I am minded with my colleague Councillor Andrews to accept the officer's recommendation of refusal on this one, as much as it grieves me that we won't get this kind of development for this village. I question whether it's the right development, given all the other things that we've got to consider. So it has been moved for approval but not seconded. It has been moved by Councillor Andrews for refusal, or
The word worded it like that, but I will.
oh, did you move it? Sorry, did you move it? Did you?
I will second it then.
Right, so that's Councillor Baker moves, Councillor Andrews seconds for refusal for officer recommendation. I'm not sure if Councillor Taylor didn't. No, you work for it though. So no. No. So members, we're going to go to the vote. So those, and because it's not seconded, Councillor Napton, we won't be voting for approval. Sorry.
I understand that, Chairman.
Okay. So it has been moved and seconded for refusal. So if members can please vote. That's 5-4 and any against? Thank you very much, members. I'm just going to quickly go through. I've got no other business. The date of the next meeting is not on here.
Sorry.
21st of November at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much, members. I'll close the meeting. Thank you.